What is going on, everyone? My name is Jared Haas, and welcome to a third edition of 1986. We're talking about the special headlines that affected the year of NASCAR 1986. And to join me again is none other. I don't think he needs an introduction again, is Steve Waid. Steve, back in 1986, we talked about what you were doing, what I was doing back in 1986, not even existing. But in the sports world, quite a bit of stuff happened. In the Super Bowl of 1986, you had the Super Bowl shuffle with the Chicago Bears, and then in baseball, you had the miracle Mets after Buckner boots the ball in first base, made the Mets victorious in the World Series. Steve, we got to talk about in baseball and other forms of sports, there's always those iconic numbers. You have Cal Ripken's consecutive starts, 2,131 starts. In NASCAR, one of our most iconic drivers is Richard Petty. And I kind of alluded to when in the last episode, 1,000 starts. He has made over 1,000 starts, but there has been a lot of debate of what's been going on. And it's mainly been boiled down to with companion races. So I want to at least give a little bit of history lesson with companion races. So more recently, with the ARCA Menards series, they combined the ARCA Menards and the ARCA West and East series. All those points counts to those each series respectively. So if you run a West and an ARCA race, you get points in ARCA in the West, and vice versa. If you run an ARCA East race, you're going to get points in that as well. Back in the early 2010s, ARCA was doing it was back in the K&N days, was the West-East combo races at Iowa. Those points only counted to the respective series. So East Series drivers got East points, and West Series drivers got West points. East Series drivers did not get points in the West Series. We run to right around the 90s or so, when this was kind of more the tail end of this, and you'll plug in as well. NASCAR had companion races with the Busch Series from 97 to 2000, the mid 90s to 2000. They had Busch North cars attempt with the Busch Series races. And then also the Winston Cup Series had Winston West drivers, mainly at Sonoma. You might know a Winston West driver, John Krebs, who took a wild ride in a race in Sonoma with Derek Hope back in the 90s. But the Winston West Series would get points. Winston West drivers would get points for the Winston West Series and the Winston Cup Series. Yet, the Winston Cup Series drivers did not get points for Winston West Series. So there has been a lot of changes through these companion races with these different series. I want you to add on what's been, going on before then too, of what you've seen with different companion races.
Well, I'll tell you the main difference, Jared, of the way it used to be. NASCAR did have a lot of divisions. They had convertibles. Eventually added Grand America and Grand National East. And as you said, Winston West. Now, the problem to me was that these other divisions were allowed to race in cup races, even though they had their own point standings, okay? Now, you had convertibles racing with Grand National cars and Winston West with Winston Cup cars, but they could not earn any Winston Cup points. They were supposed to earn points only for their divisions, but that got a little bit murky. Now, the reason it got a little murky was that sometimes Winston West or a Grand American car would win a race, and then there'd be some debate over why he didn't get cup points. People could not understand why you can beat cup cars and not get cup points. Now, in the case of Richard Petty, whom you brought up, that was a Lulu, Jared. It really was. That's a major difference over what we've been talking about. Richard actually raced in a convertible division race, convertibles only, in Daytona, February 1959. Okay? Now, for several years, Richard started in 1958, and all the way to 1982, he was listed with 21 starts in 1959. Now, in 1983, that number was bumped to 22. and no one knew why. Why was it bumped up? There's a big debate over among statisticians and historians as to why he was added another Grand National start. And this was very important in 1986 because Richard was going to make his 1,000th start in Michigan in June of that year. That was unprecedented. I mean, it got news all over the South, and you can just imagine how much it played to the sports pages in those days. And it also got national coverage. It went beyond the normal regional coverage. But then somebody started asking, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. He's been added a start in 1959. Why? Only the start counted. We don't see his money. We don't see where he finished. It was only a start. Now, STP was Richard's sponsor, longtime sponsor, ironclad sponsor. SDP volunteered to investigate and find the answers. Now, Jared, I want you to imagine any sponsor today saying, okay, we'll stake up the gauntlet for our driver. I mean, it's not done. And back then, SDP was really making precedent by doing this. So they went out and investigated and came back and said that Richard's 22nd start in 1959 came in a convertible race in Daytona in February of that year. But there's a problem there. It was a convertible race. Why is he even a Grand National start? As I said earlier, nothing else is counted, just the start. And it was a start in a convertible race that was now listed as a Grand National start. Nobody knows the answer to this one to this day, Jared.
Absolutely. And especially back in those days, things were kind of murky. It was harder to keep up stats back in the day. We don't have that, the nice features that we have, the technology we have to keep up with those stats. And it was kind of that interesting point, the convertible start. And this kind of brings into another debate as well is Bobby Allison, did he get 84 or 85 wins? Because
Right.
he's tied with Darrell Waltrip on the all times list with 84 wins. But yet, some say that he has 85 wins. This is part of the same topic. Obviously, I want to hear your thoughts on this, and I'll give you mine. What I think, did Bobby Allison win 84 or 85 races?
All right, here's the deal. Back in August of 1971, there was a race at Bowman Gray, and it was called, a Grand National race. But as was the practice in those days, NASCAR led cars from other divisions into the races, especially when tracks had a short field. So they let Grand American cars enter this race at Bowman Gray. Bobby Allison was smart enough to realize that a smaller car would handle much better on such a short track as Bowman Gray. So he entered in a Mustang and he won the race. He took the checkered flag ahead of every single car. Okay, NASCAR stuck to its practice of saying, okay, you won the race, but you are only going to get Grand American points. We've always said that if you race a car from another division, you can't get Grand National or Winston Cup points. You get points for your division alone. And so they did not award Allison with a Winston Cup / Grand National victory. Now think back what happened with Richard Petty. He was given a Grand National start after running in a convertible race, not a combination race, strictly convertible race. And they gave him a start for that. Shorty Rollins won that convertible race in Daytona and was never credited with a Grand National victory. So add it all up and it doesn't make any sense. How can a driver get a Grand National start by starting in a convertible series race and the winner of that convertible series race not get credit for a Grand National victory? And here's Bobby Allison over here who won the Cup race, beat the Cup cars, and yet NASCAR refuses to let him have a Winston Cup victory. And boy, let me tell you something. The Bobby Allison fans have been hot ever since 1971 over this particular ruling. They still are today. I mean, you'll meet a few of them, they'll say, I don't want to hear what you have to say, Bobby Allison has 85 wins, one more than Daryl. But you can see the mess, can't you, Jared? You got a driver get a Grand National start. He didn't run in a Grand National race. You got a driver winning in the Cup race, sure, in a different car, a Grand American car, but he's not given credit for the race. It doesn't add up. It just doesn't balance.
I I mean, I agree. It's a lot of murky situations with these starts. As you mentioned before, there's some acclamations that Richard Petty has 1,194 starts. And I've seen Richard Petty as low as 1,177 starts as some other sources. But NASCAR's kind of agreed at 1,184. My thoughts on the Bobby Allison ordeal is it's if it is a Grand National race and you promote it as a Grand National race and you beat those Grand National drivers, you should have been awarded the win and the points. That being said, NASCAR, I mean, they pretty straightforward said that a Grand American car would not win. They would not get points on that. So I understand that front. Should have Bobby Allison been awarded the win? Yes. I mean, he was in a Grand National race but he had a different car.
Sure.
But he was still, like I said, within those rules of NASCAR, he didn't technically get that win. I understand that frustration and, having that debate between Bobby Allison and Darrell Waltrip, that one extra win, it's a pretty easy stat to lean someone one way or another.
Well, here's the problem. In the past, NASCAR, I think, created the problem by allowing combination races, by allowing cars from different divisions to race in a Grand National race in the first place. Now, I know why it did it. It did it because at several times in the past, racetracks were getting short fields. Now, when they used to have 45, 50 races a year, yeah, somebody's going to get a short field because the only way you could win a championship was to run most, if not all, the races on that grueling schedule. Most teams didn't have that kind of money, and they couldn't enter every race that they wanted to enter. So NASCAR filled up the void by allowing cars from other divisions to race. I mean, they did that with convertibles. Convertibles could run in a Grand National race, and they called that a sweepstakes race. What does that mean? I mean, that's where the problem started. Now, the only thing to me that stands out is this. You got Richard Petty being credited with a Grand National start in a convertible race. It wasn't even any part of Grand National race, as we all know. Who did that? Where did that stat come from? Okay, if you're going to give him a start for a Grand National start for a convertible race, how is it that you can take the winner of the Bowman Gray race in 1971, Bobby Allison, who raced a Grand American car, but tell him he's not going to get credit for the victory because he ran the Grand American car in a Grand National race? NASCAR advertised it as a Grand National race. How can you give one driver a Grand National start, after making a start in a non-Grand National race and deny victory to another one? The logic is not there.
I mean, I agree. I mean, we're even seeing this in NASCAR today with the ever staging with NASCAR in the rain. We just had an Xfinity race run officially 93 laps because it was after the end of the stage two. And it was an official race. So there's a lot of things that evolve with NASCAR, and it's a learning process. And I mean, it's a hard thing to learn with these lessons. And some people have gotten, wins kind of stripped away with Bobby Allison. He should have won one, but how did Richard Petty get an extra start on that? It's baffling to me too. And this happened way back in the day. But I want to at least ask you on this. Going back to Michigan with Richard Petty's 1,000 start with the celebration, how crowded was it? I mean, how chaotic was it being there in Michigan with all the different media teams there from, not just the South, but like everywhere else nationally? Because I've a couple races myself, and it's just chaotic just having, a solid group of people. But I can't imagine, covering a very big race with a whole bunch of different reporters from different places.
Well, it was a pretty good scene for the media in Michigan. There was more attendance in the media at Michigan for that race, and of course, several others that year, simply because Richard Petty was there, and they had ceremonies and a lot of pre-race things that went on to add to the glitter of the race. Richard Petty was also the cause of a big media attended race at Michigan in about 78 when he drove a Chevrolet for the first time. Finally left Dodge after dealing with that Magnum and went to a Chevrolet at Michigan. And not only did they come floating in, the media come floating in from the Michigan area and other northern outlets, about 9 or 10 southern riders flew up to Michigan to cover this race. They had never been to Michigan before. And Richard Petty and his Chevrolet was such a draw that they just had to come up here and covered it for the fans in the South. I mean, I know one or two of them that just went in and begged their sports editors. I'll eat peanut butter sandwiches. I'll sleep in the car. Let me go. Let me go. That kind of thing went on. So Richard was responsible for a couple of the most widely attended races in Michigan. No doubt about it.
Well, that's pretty crazy to think. Just eating peanut butter sandwiches, staying in your car to cover a race. I mean, that's kind of the pinnacle of love of the sport that I enjoy. Well, Steve, we got one more part to talk about in this video series too,
Sure.
but I always appreciate it, as always, to have you on here. And from everyone here at Front Stretch, make sure to subscribe and like this video, helps us out. And as always, I always say, make sure to have a great race weekend.
Jared Haas with FrontStretch.com. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, check one of those two videos out that we have right beside you. Visit FrontStretch.com for more great content.